This week in GamePron news, Australians get a little bit of encouragement before having their hopes squashed when it comes to being treated like adults. A couple of beloved characters make a welcome return, the Voxel Agents win big at Independent Games Festival China, 2 completely massive games are launched, changing the world as we know it, and a gentleman is suing Rockstar Games, claiming they stole his life and used it to create Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen. Last weekend, the Australian Federal Labor Government announced that they were backflipping and throwing their support behind the R18 rating for video games that they had traditionally opposed. The news came after a study showed no conclusive link between video games and violence, and just a few days before the Standing Committee of Attorneys General met to discuss the matter. For years, Australia has been the only Western country without an adult rating for video games, with the highest rating a mature accompanied 15+. That means if a game is considered inappropriate for 15-year-olds, it is refused classification and effectively banned in that country. To change the rules requires a unanimous decision of the Standing Committee of Attorneys General, with one representative from each state and territory agreeing to all adjustments. The committee met on Friday, December 10th for the second time in 2010, and an adult rating for video games was the hot topic for discussion. Gamers around the country and around the world were glued to their monitors waiting for some news, any news, to emerge from Canberra. We were promised an announcement at 12:30, then a press conference was called for 3:30 and further delays saw Home Affairs Minister Brendan O'Connor taking the stage a little after 4 p.m. And he wasn't the bringer of good news as we'd hoped. Instead, he announced that many members were asking for more details about what the proposed changes would mean for the current rating system, which has seen some games sneaking in under the MA 15+ rating to avoid being banned, despite being entirely inappropriate for that age group. What would be considered an MA 15+ game under the new regime? What would be R18+? And what sort of content would result in a game being refused classification? Because of this uncertainty, the committee was unable to reach a unanimous decision, and the matter will now be brought up at the next meeting in March 2011. While many people are crushed, upset and angry at the decision, many others are seeing it as a positive and as a great leap in the right direction. After many years of being given straight-out definitive no answers with no explanation, it's refreshing that this new committee has responded with something that looks like it could be a yes once it gets the details hashed out a bit more. Anyway, while that was dominating the news down under, the rest of the world was buzzing over a couple of big reveals. First up, Crystal Dynamics took the wraps off their brand new Tomb Raider reboot, showing a much younger Lara Croft. The developers have set out to build an entirely fresh heroine, and to do that, they had to break the character down completely before rebuilding her. The end result, simply called Tomb Raider, was shown off on the January cover of Game Informer, and it's already been getting great responses around the globe. Even as an awkward, frightened young lady, Lara Croft apparently still has that certain something. Later in the week, we got our first glimpse of Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception, which brings Nathan Drake back to the PS3 as he tries to uncover the fabled Atlantis of the Sands. Of course, things don't go exactly to plan, with some terrible secrets revealed that relate to the Lost City, and Drake is forced to confront some of his deepest fears.
All men dream, but not equally.
More of the game will be shown off at this weekend's VGAs, but from the teaser we've seen, it looks like, rather than trying to do anything too different, Naughty Dog are sticking to what they're good at. We told you a while ago that iPhone developers, the Voxel Agents, had made the finals of Independent Games Festival China. Now we're back to let you know that they've won! The Aussies beat out heavy competition to take home the coveted Best Mobile Game statue for Train Conductor 2 USA. The festival also awarded South Korean's Turtle Cream the best game title for their work on Sugar Cube, an intriguing 2D tile-flipping platformer. Now, if you haven't already picked up Train Conductor 2, now's as good a time as any, with the game included in the Aussie App Sale, which has just kicked off for its second year. Other great Australian-developed iPhone titles are also featured in this sale, including Tin Man's first 3 gamebook adventures, Halogen by Rocket Hands, and Half Brick's ever-popular Fruit Ninja. It was a big week for launching things, with gamers divided by loyalty as 2 of the biggest gamers in the world released updates on Tuesday. And somehow, nobody heard a peep of complaint about the timetable clash. Guess that's what happens when one of the games is the new World of Warcraft expansion Cataclysm, and the other is Bejeweled 3. Deathwing has arrived in Azeroth, transforming the game world into a mess of fire and brimstone, the corrupted dragon aspect wreaking havoc on the landscape so many people called home. He's brought with him a new level cap, a whole new bunch of features, and a couple of new races though, so nobody's too upset. On the other hand, the first true sequel for the Bejeweled franchise in more than half a decade has finally arrived, and Match 3 fans have rekindled their love of the game. Bejeweled is one of the top 10 video game franchises of all time, with some pretty impressive statistics. More than 500 million people worldwide have dipped their toes in these addictive waters, with more than 50 million units sold over 17 platforms. Over the past decade, more than 7.5 billion hours have been dedicated to the game, and a truly terrifying bit of trivia for you: a copy of the game is sold somewhere in the world every 4.3 seconds. While you're putting those numbers to put into perspective, I've got a few more for you. Call of Duty Black Ops was released a month ago. In that time, it has sold 8.4 million copies in the US alone. That sounds like a pretty big number, but I can make it even bigger. That's more copies than Super Mario Kart, Halo 3 and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time sold in their entire lifetimes. It's also more copies than the original versions of Tomb Raider, Metal Gear Solid and Grand Theft Auto. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. And while you're in that confused state, I'd like to tell you about Michael Washington. Michael Washington, known to his friends as Shag, is an American model and backing singer for rap group Cypress Hill. He's also currently suing Rockstar Games and their parent company, Take-Two Interactive, because they based Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on his life. According to court documents, Shag is asking for a quarter of the game's profits, that's $250 million, for fraud, misappropriation of likeness and copyright infringement. He claims the lead character in the game, CJ, bears more than a passing resemblance to his own troubled youth. The plot thickens when you learn that Rockstar developers met with Shag back in 2003 to answer questions on his street life, which saw Shag explain that teenagers in his gang rode around on bicycles. Now, Shag is not a gamer and didn't think too much of the meeting until nearly 6 years later when his nephew showed him this great new game he'd been playing, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. As he watched the characters in the game interact, Shag realised something. After comparing images of CJ and photos of himself back in the day, it became clear that Rockstar had stolen Shag's image and never paid him. I'd like to take this moment to point out that CJ's appearance in-game is pretty fluid. His hairstyle can be adjusted and his weight adjusted from skinny to morbidly obese. We're not quite sure which image Shag exactly is claiming was stolen. Now, Take-Two have promised to vigorously defend themselves in the case, explaining that they believe the lawsuit is completely without merit. Right now, I'm inclined to agree with them just a bit. Until next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is GamePron News.